On behalf of IIM Ranchi, I thank you for joining today's webinar. Me, Dr. Aditya Mishra, and my colleague, Professor Ansuman Hazarika, we both belong to Atal Bihari Vajpayee Center for Leadership and Governance team. And we welcome you, speakers, as well as all the participants to today's webinar. The center, which was conceived some 2 years back, has the objective to do multidisciplinary research in subjects and themes related to leadership, policy, and governance. And we have been consistently putting our effort in doing those kind of development of knowledge, development of content effort. Simultaneously, we are also trying our hard to disseminate the knowledge which we have obtained through different types of seminars, roundtables, and lecture series. Today's webinar, as we know that, we already know that we are going through Corona Kaal. So in today's times, webinars and these e-symposiums are the better way to connect with our target audience and disseminate the knowledge which we have gained over the time and based on the expertise views, right? So this is the addition to our effort in disseminating the knowledge. And among us today, we have Mr. Kaushik, who is the co-founder and chief executive officer of KT, and Mr. Anil Kumar SG is the founder and CEO of Samunnati. I would like all of you to please welcome, please have warm welcome to these two guest speakers for the day. And let me introduce the topic first, and I will go to the speaker's background here. The topic of this webinar is Annadata, Revolutionizing Agriculture. And today's theme is doubling farmers' income. So as all of us know about this particular theme, that this is very much in contention, this is very much in today's, very much prevalent in today's times, especially in India, where we everywhere the information goes like, there is farmer distress, there is some issues related to farming, farmers are paying heavy price because of the nature's curing, all those kind of things are going on. So as the experts, what are your views on that? That would also like to listen from you, and we'll try to learn from those ideas. Now let me introduce you these two honorable speakers. The first one is Kaushik. Hi Kaushik. Kaushik is a graduate from IIT Kharagpur, and he has obtained MBA from Columbia Business School. And they serve the Kheti, his organization serves farmers through their greenhouse in a box method, which is an affordable modular greenhouse bundle with end-to-end services. Designed for smallholders, their greenhouse fits in 1 to 2% of the land, protect crops from environmental risk, and grows 7 times more food using 90% less water. That is quite fascinating, Mr. Kaushik. And along with the greenhouse, they also provide farmers the financing, input linkage, training, and market linkage services, creating a seamless path towards a steady income of $100 per month. Over the past year, they have designed the product, created partnerships, and started their farmer pilot. They have won multiple awards and have been featured in CNBC, Forbes, SSIR, and other media outlets. We welcome you, Kaushik, to this webinar.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Welcome. I'm happy to be here and excited to talk more.
Next honorable speaker is Mr. Anil Kumar SG. As I told you earlier, he is founder and CEO of Samunnati. Anil holds a master's in management from Asian Institute of Management, Manila. He also holds a master's in business administration from Symbiosis Institute of Management, Pune, and a graduate degree in humanities from Osmania University, Hyderabad. Established in November 2014, Samunnati offers financial, co-financial and non-financial solutions to marginal, so all aspects of financial help. Then we have marginal small and medium holders, including farmers, agri enterprises, and wholesale retailers. Samunnati stands for collective growth, collective prosperity, and collective elevation. And in its journey of the last 5 years, focusing exclusively on agri and allied activities, has its presence in more than 54 value chains spread over 19 states, so almost across India. Samunnati works with over 500 farmer producer organizations that are collectively serving about 4 million predominantly smallholder farmers across India. Anil is a career banker with over 28 years of experience in the areas of rural, retail, and agri banking. He started his career with Canara Bank and then joined ICICI Bank. Over the last decade, Anil's work was focused on creating newer institutions across the country and operating in the financially excluded market with corresponding support structures to their capacity building. Before Samunnati, Anil was the co-founder and trustee of IFMR Trust and the CEO of IFMR Rural Channels. We welcome you, Mr. Anil, to this webinar. And
My privilege to be here. Thank you.
Looking forward to learn from both of you. Now, let me introduce our Honorable Director, Professor Shailendra Singh. He himself is an eminent scholar in organizational behavior and human resources management, and he has been very instrumental in launching this particular center, as well as consistently encouraging us to go for such kind of projects, such kind of research, which will give back something back to the society. So today, whatever we have been doing so far, it's been related to social entrepreneurship, related to agri entrepreneurship, related to women entrepreneurship. All are having the efforts coming from Director Sir, and we are the foot soldiers of his directions. And today, I would like to welcome him and I will also invite him to put some thoughts and provide some ideas about the theme that is doubling farmers' income. We welcome you, sir, to the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, let me introduce my colleague, Professor Hazarika. And as I already told you, he also belongs to our center, Atal Bihari Vajpayee Center for Leadership, Policy and Governance. And he is having expertise in business laws and business ethics. And today he is going to moderate the webinar. Now over to Professor Hazarika.
Thank you, Professor Mishra. Welcome everyone. Welcome respected directors, sir, speakers for the day, faculty members, and all the students. Before we start off with the event, we'd like to request our honorable director, sir, to please present his kind words on the day and also enlighten us about his vision for the center. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Hazarika. First, let me welcome Mr. Kaushik K. and Sri Anil Kumar ji to this webinar, and we are looking forward to listening to their creation and their contribution in making the farmers' income double. This theme is close to my heart, as Honorable Prime Minister has given call that Annadata themselves are suffering. Their income should be doubled, their income should be made such that they are living honorable life. Currently, what we see, farmers who are small and marginal holders are having really very difficult life, and many of them are complaining. I have gone to the roots to listen to these stories that they don't get even that income which they have put as an input for producing whatever they are producing. What happens, they are totally dependent on the vagary of the season, vagary of the rains and other natural calamities, natural forces, and many times whatever they have produced actually does not go to their home or to their khalihan. It gets wasted, and the input cost is day by day is becoming costly, and the actual produce cost is not going up in that proportion. They also keep on complaining that the transportation cost and other costs that they incur to reach the mandi, that itself is such that it is prohibitive, and they sell their produce at their field itself, and they actually get around 70% or 60% of whatever is the minimum support price given for those produce. And when they are producer of say green vegetables and whatever product gets wasted very quickly, in those products they many times dispose on throwaway prices, and feel that if they actually go to market and try to sell the amount of time and the resources that they spend, it is better that they sell it at their doorstep itself. So having these plights, plus they are not having sufficient engagement in between the season. Once they have sown the wheat till the harvest time, they don't have much to do, but they say we don't have anything that can be done gainfully to remain employed, plus making some money out of it. Similarly, they also feel that a lot of pressure is there on the family, because the children are also looking forward to good education, good facility, social status, and good facility in the family regarding transportation, medicine, and other things. On that front, also there is no formal social support or security system for these people, so they get doubly cycled in these kind of problem. And it is good that you people are also helping with the small funds to make them self-dependent. Otherwise, what is happening, if they are in the clutches of what is called sahukars, then their life is miserable further. Banks, although are accessible to them, but because of low education or low awareness, they they feel it is easier to approach sahukar or the person who lend them on high interest rather than to going to the bank. So I have seen in the villages, they will put their valuable as a caution money and then take loan, and which goes sometimes as high as a 5% per month. So keeping all these things, their situation and their plight is a very miserable situation, is very miserable. And there are not many NGOs which are actually working at the grassroots at many places. They are good propagating rights causes and other causes, but farmers' causes are not being taken by many people. So this webinar is going to give us lot of insight how we can deal with people's problem at the grassroots, particularly small and marginal farmers, and make their income double so that they can live a decent, respectful life, because they have contributed to the feeding of entire society, so who will take care of their own needs. So I'll say welcome once again, and looking forward to listen to both of you and your insights. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the insightful words, and those were a very good introductory words rather to the entire problem that we are trying to tackle. And we now like to request our speakers to take it forward. And we'd like to start off with Mr. Kumar and try to learn from him about what his organization Samunnati does and how it works towards making the lives of farmers better. Thank you. So is your insight.
Okay. Honorable Director, Professor Shailendra Singh ji, and of course, Karthik and all other friends here. Very good evening to all of you, and wonderful to be here and sharing Samunnati's understanding of this space. The introductory comments of Professor Singh couldn't have been more apt, because he, in a way, crystallized what the requirements are if we are looking at doubling the farmers' income from the perspective of the farmers. So Samunnati as an entity works with a mission to make markets work for smallholder farmers. That is the mission, that is the purpose for which the organization exists. And we have embarked in pursuit of our mission an approach of value chain proposition. And the hypothesis that we are pursuing here is, whenever we look at a value chain, you have the demand side of the value chain, you have the supply side of the value chain. And the demand side of the value chain is represented by agri enterprises, the ones who are the consumers of produce from the fields, either for their immediate use if they are processors, or grade, sort and sell further to the processors. In other words, someone who procures a lot of agri produce is on the demand side, and the supply side is represented by farmers and farmer collectives. So what Samunnati is doing is, it is looking at engaging with the demand side of the value chain, and is looking at how do we remove the working capital constraint that exists in the demand side of the value chain. And who are these people? They are the ones who know where to buy what commodity or what agri produce and whom to sell to. And whenever that kind of a transaction happens, there is a working capital requirement. And in the introduction, Professor Mishra mentioned about co-financial, non-financial, and financial. In other words, what we are basically looking at is, how do we provide a bouquet of services that are tools, that are means, that are important, but the purpose being, can we make the agri value chains operate at a higher equilibrium? Can we increase the throughput? And one way of doing it is just remove the working capital constraint between the buyers and sellers of the value chain, so that they would be able to buy more and sell more. This is not unique for agriculture. Every value chain operates this way, in terms of the seller requiring money immediately and the buyer wanting to pay later. But what makes this critical in the context of agriculture is, agriculture also has seasonality and cyclicality. And that makes this requirement much more acute, much more important, because the time frame shrinks. Everybody needs to buy and sell at the same time, and hence having access to working capital makes it extremely important. So our endeavor is to remove that working capital constraint, so that the sellers and buyers would do more. And as the throughput in the value chain increases, they would be looking at newer lines of supply, is when we would like to bring in farmer producer organizations, the FPOs, that most of us are familiar with, to be able to aggregate the supply, the agri produce of their members, and in turn become the aggregators themselves, and be able to supply to the demand side of the value chain. That is the aspiration. Now, the moment you talk about the farmer producer organizations, we know that there are only a handful of matured and inspiring entities, Amul being one shining example of that. But then this country also has thousands of many farmer collectives which have huge potential but require a little bit of hand holding and a little bit of uh, support to be able to live up to their potential. And that is what Samunnati does through an approach that we refer to as AMLA approach: aggregation, market linkage, and advisory services. That's the acronym. Now, the aggregation is a set of farmers doing the same economic activity come together, whether it is tomato growing farmers, or whether it is sugarcane farmers, or whether it is the cotton growing farmers. A set of farmers doing the same economic activity coming together represents the aggregated farmer collective. Now, what is this aggregation for? Aggregation is for collective benefit. And why collective benefit? All of us know, IIM Ranchi is a management institute. The Porter's Five Forces model comes into existence. The bargaining power of the buyers and sellers. You have a better bargaining power if you have an aggregated demand. And this aggregated demand for a better bargaining power is for market linkages, whether it is on the supply side of the market linkage, which represents the inputs side of the cultivation, or the demand side of the market linkage, which represents the harvest or produce side of the market linkage. On both sides, in order to have a better bargaining power, you need to access larger markets. And in order to access larger markets, you need working capital again there. So for us, Samunnati's dimension of financial services comes from making the market linkages happen. It is more a means. It is not an end in itself. It is important but not sufficient. What is more important for them is market linkages. And at Samunnati, we also have many customers who say, we don't require your loan or money or financial linkage. Give us markets. That's enough for us. We have many customers who say that. Now, once the aggregation and market linkage are taken care of, market linkages are taken care of, is when the last A of AMLA comes into picture, the advisory services. Now, the advisory services in the context of our engagement with FPOs has two perspectives, two dimensions. One dimension of advisory services is external facing, market facing, in which how can the FPO respond to the market requirement in terms of what to sell, whom to sell, what quantity to sell, what quality to sell, which markets to go, so on and so forth. External facing, responding to the market demand. But then the second dimension that becomes relevant once you start responding to the market demand is your institution capability. Do I have the institution capability, the inner muscle, to be able to respond to the external market? Because the moment you start responding to the external market, the quality, quantity dynamics become extremely important and critical. So how do we build that inner muscle, that inner capability in the farmer collective, which is basically a cooperative in terms of spirit, to be able to respond to the external market? And that is where our institution work, our institution building work comes into picture. So we have three distinct activities and distinct teams. One team that takes care of the financial intermediation or financial services. The second team takes care of market linkages, and the third team takes care of institution building. For us, institution building is not a CSR activity. We think that to be a complementary activity to the business. And as aptly mentioned in the name of this entity, this is Samunnati. Samunnati in Sanskrit means, it's a combination of two words, Sam Unnati, collective growth, collective prosperity, collective elevation. So this word collective is an important dimension, and hence making this happen together is an important dimension for us. So we have been at it the last 4.5 years of scaled existence and 6 years of existence as a company. We have been able to reach out to about 54 value chains. We have products ranging from 1 day to 5 years, and quantum ranging from 5,000 rupees to 15 crores per entity. And we have our presence in about 20 states now. And we have done close to 5,000 crores of financial intermediation as well as market linkages at an entity level. Even during pandemic, we have done about 1,200 crores since the first lockdown was announced. As an entity, we are a B2B2C entity. We work with the middle B in between, and middle B at the production side is represented by farmer collectives, the FPOs, and the middle B in terms of agri enterprises is represented by a large organized retailer or a processing unit, so on and so forth. What this B2B2C structure helps us is to grow non-linearly, because the middle B is the local partner. We work with the local partner to be able to reach out to their customer base, and most importantly, it will also help us customize the proposition to our customers in a way where the incentives get aligned. So that's in a nutshell is what the model is and what we are doing so far. Professor Hazarika.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. It's very interesting about the AMLA model that you talked about, and more interesting for us is that you continued with your business throughout the lockdown. That is something of a very, very big bright spot, and also very important for the farmers, because as they are now saying that the Bharat is pulling India forward at the moment. So you are a part of the Bharat story, which makes it even better, and a good lesson for all the entrepreneurs coming ahead. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. We would now request Mr. Kaushik to tell us more about Kheti in around 10 to 12 minutes, ideally. Thank you, Mr. Kaushik.
Great, thank you. So there's a list of documents coming somewhere. Yeah, so thanks everyone. So thank you, Professor Hazarika, Dr. Singh, and Professor Mishra, and everyone else for being here and calling me for this. I would first start off by saying that we are much more early stage company than Samunati, and we don't have thousands and thousands of farmers, but we're early in our stage to reach that goal. So we're in that dream. So we're still a small company looking to create impact from a different angle. So I'll start by telling you a little bit of the story of why this was started. And so all of this started in 2015, when in Telangana there is a village called Depalli, which is near the airport, about 50-60 kilometers from the airport. So there, me and my co-founders, we had already spent like 5-6 years working with farmers and rural populations in different capacities. And we were, a little bit of this dissatisfaction with the depth of impact we were making. We felt that we were not really creating long-term impact in the lives of farmers by providing either training or market linkage or input linkage piecemeal. We were doing these in different companies, right? So, so we were doing this field visits, trying to understand what is it that we wanted to really do. And we met this, farmer called Reshma. Reshma is, about 25 years old. She's been working on her family farm, which is about 3 acres of land for the last, I think, 10-15 years. And so when we met her, she's this unique individual. So she has this energy, right? Every time you meet her, she has this enthusiasm. She wants to learn new things. She's always had this smile on her face. And, and part of that is because, she was able to work with one of the companies that we had worked with before, we had built before, to get the things that, Professor Singh talked about. She got access to some input linkage, she got access to market linkage, she got access to some training. So she knew her farming a little bit better than other farmers. But at the same time, it was still a profession that was quite unforgiving. So her story really moved us, right? So the year that, in 2015, half of her, at least, she planted tomatoes, and half of her tomatoes at least were affected by a pest attack, and her yields were half of what she expected, right? The year before that, she had planted, I think, gourds, bitter gourds, and one unseasonal rain basically had a huge damage, and she probably lost 1/4 of her crop. And for 6 months, almost in a year, like Professor Singh mentioned, she didn't have anything to do because her heat was too much and the water was drying up, her borewell was drying up, and she didn't really have any income generating activity during that time. So basically, the truth was that for Reshma, even though she had all those connections and she was working hard, her hard work never paid off because of the climate. And it wasn't just Reshma's problem. We talked to almost 1,000 farmers during that time, of our travels. And almost every farmer would talk about that. And I think this is an obvious thing when we think about it, but the level of risk that climate poses to a small farmer, basically over a 5-year period, makes their farm income close to zero, because one year you might make money, the next year you have some climate related challenge. And the other big thing that moved us was that across these 1,000 farmers, every farmer we talked to, without knowing the word, would talk about climate change. They would say how 5 years ago this is not the case, how water tables are drying up now. 10 years ago the summer was better, we could grow more longer. And so basically it's a bad situation of climate risk, and climate risk deciding so much of farmers' income, and getting worse every year due to climate change. And that's the real problem that we wanted to solve, and that's why Kheti was started. So our mission is to deliver increased incomes, sure, but increase climate resilient incomes to small farmers. The idea is that if talking about it in the terms of managerial statistics, so for farmers, their mean income, X bar, is very low, but their sigma X bar, the standard deviation of incomes, is very high. The risk is very high, right? So that climate risk is what our mission is to reduce. And the other interesting thing is that all of these problems have been solved. So, the thing that we do, greenhouses, which, Professor Mishra mentioned, has been established in developed countries for probably decades, if not centuries, right? People have been using some form of these technologies which reduce risk across, for many, many years. But small farmers in India have never had access to these because of many reasons. So that's our role. Our role in this whole space is that we are the people who bring together people, process, partnerships, product to make sure that it works, and make sure that these technologies that are proven to increase farmers' incomes and to reduce their risk, they're available to small farmers in India. So the way that we do this is, I think Professor Mishra mentioned this, but basically we've built this low-cost modular greenhouse. A greenhouse is basically a structure with some covering which protects farmers' crops from heat, pests, rain, hail, all of those things that you would want to protect a crop from, and helps farmers grow more yields and use much lesser water. So 7 times more yields and 90% lesser water, which means that almost 50 times water savings per every kilo that farmers grows is possible in a greenhouse like this. So we made greenhouses cheaper. So our greenhouse today costs, the latest version that we have costs about 90% less than standard greenhouses available in the market, which means that it becomes affordable to farmers. And then we also bundle financing, linkage. So we help farmers get loans to buy that greenhouse. So, and it's great that Anil is here, because Samunati was our first partner and who gave loans to farmers. So we partner with companies like Samunati. So we have partnership with Bank of Baroda, other banks, to make sure that farmers get loans to buy this greenhouse. But once they get the greenhouse, we do everything else that is needed to make that greenhouse successful. So we help farmers with seeds, fertilizers, what to put into that greenhouse. We help them with training and advisory. We run a call center advisory platform to help farmers learn how to grow in the greenhouse. And then we help them in connecting with markets, with people like Big Basket, all this modern retailers and, e-commerce retailers, right? So this whole package is what delivers long-term climate resilience to small farmers. So basically, farmers, our greenhouse uses about 1 to 2% of a small farmer's land. Typically, they work for 1 to 2 hours a day in it, and they're able to earn, after all costs and loan repayment, 60,000 rupees for profit every year, which basically is doubling their income. So in their entire piece of land, which is about 2 to 2.5 acres, they earn about 60,000 rupees of profit. And in this one plot of land, which is the greenhouse, they earn 60,000 rupees of profit. So today we work with about 500 farmers, and and we are at that stage where we are right now launched our plan to rapidly scale this up. So over the next 1 year, we are hoping to get 2,000 farmers, and over the next 3 years, we are aiming to reach 10,000 farmers and create this long-term sustainability and viability in the lives of those farmers.
Thank you, Mr. Kaushik. At this point, I would like to request all interested participants, they can ask their questions through the chat box. And before we go there, we'd like to ask a respected director, sir, if he has a few words to describe the work being done by the entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Professor Hajalka. We have heard the two respected speakers very professional presentation. One on supply chain side, both at demand side and the supply side. And here, what is known that farmers want market. That is what is the central theme. They produce if they can get the market, and market which is friendly, where they can get the money quickly. What happens again, he has mentioned that for input cost, farmers want money, but when they are selling, they want the price, they want the money immediately. But that's not true in real life. My younger brother is a sugarcane farmer. So he waits year and year and year to get his payment from government of Uttar Pradesh. So this is the situation, and since these farmers are very stressed regarding cash in hand, so they will like to sell their product and throw away price to get the cash immediately. So if the Mr. Kumar's organization is helping farmers in getting the input cost quickly and getting the output cost quickly through good throughput processing, etc., it's a very, very welcome contribution. And now what Kaushik ji has said, that makes lot of sense, that farmers are experiencing so much risk of weather and other uncertain conditions, and if his greenhouse is going to help the farmers and they can produce and earn the income which is triple of the normal time, then definitely it is going to help. And the issue of scalability has already been mentioned. I would like, if he is doing work in Bihar, Jharkhand and Uttar Pradesh, we will send our student and I myself visit what is happening on the ground, and we would like to report through our newsletter, our journal, so that this catches the attention of more policy makers, so he can be invited to help the farmers on large scale. Experiments happen on a small scale, but if we want to commercially make it viable option, then it should be done on large scale. So I congratulate Kaushik ji for this nice intervention which is happening. And my wife is a culture scientist. I have seen the greenhouses. They definitely help farmers, but the scale of help that Kaushik ji said, if that is the thing, it is going to be a great boom for the farmers in doubling their income. So Hajarka ji, this is from my side.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So we already have a question. The first question which we have is from Professor Nandi, and we unfortunately lost our connection with Mr. Kumar, but we have another person from Samunnati. He is Mr. Hari Rajgopal. He is also a senior official at Samunnati, and he has kindly agreed to fill up in between. So technical problems, they occur all the time. But thank you. Welcome, Mr. Rajgopal. So,
Thank you.
So we now start off with the questions, and I think Mr. Kaushik, you can take this round, and then we move on to Mr. Rajgopal. And Professor Nandi asks, how will these three agri-reform bills recently, which have been introduced recently by the government, change the dynamics of farm income? I'd like to add something. talking about the agri reform bills, do they also affect your plans of your venture particularly? Do they affect your functioning? And in case they do, how do they help you? Yeah. Thank you.
You want me to go, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think me and my co-founder wrote a full article in Hindi Business Line about this. So I think I can go on and on. So I'll try to keep it short. But we think overall that these reform bills are a start towards creating more of a competitive market for for agribusiness and agriculture in general. So I think overall startups see there is a lot of potential for innovation, because when you open up the markets, there is much more potential of doing that. And we've been people like us have already been doing that, right? We don't go to them. We haven't been doing it work at the mandi with whether you look at all the other big market startups like NinjaCart, they are all not working on the mandi system as much as they as we expect. If you look at the overall percentage of people who are currently using the mandi system, it's a small percentage, or it's a, let's say, slivers in different states. So I think it opens up a lot of room for innovation, and so I think overall we're excited about it. But at the same time, the caveat is that there are could be a lot of short-term shocks, and those short-term shocks, and there could also be some sort of when in open market, in free markets, when there's information asymmetry, that's when one side suffers, right? And farmers don't have as much information as a startup like us has, or a big organization has. So we need to find ways to solve that. So I think there's been a lot of backlash about those bills, but I think the backlash needs to be addressed in terms of saying, is this bills the perfect one? They're not. But we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. What I think we need to do together is that we need to find a way to make sure that the negative doesn't happen and harness this positive, which is overall they're all about free markets, right? And I think free markets are good for agriculture here, because I don't think agriculture got the 1991 treatment that it could have gotten. I think it's a great
Thank you, Mr. Kaushik. We'd like to ask the same question also to you, Mr. Rajgopal, as to how it affect your business. What you do.
Sure. So thank you for having me, and I am happy I could join in place of Anil. He's in the field with some technical connectivity issues. But as Sammunati, we are rather positive on the new farm bills, because one is the core constituency that we are serving, which is farmer producer organizations, are a key beneficiary of these farm bills. And then when the monopsony, as they say in economics, of buyer monopoly goes out, the sellers are left with more choices. Now, as Kaushik said, it's not the perfect choice or a multiple of ideal choices, but it is more choices. So when you have more choices, the terms of trade tend to improve for the players in the market. So let us assume that the existing mandi system is going to take 80% plus of the produce even after all these new farm bills, because that practically remains the best market access chance for the vast majority of farmers. But people do have options outside, which means the terms of trade for the 20%, which improve, hopefully, are also setting the floor terms of trade for the rest of the 80%. So net, we have better terms of trade going towards the farmers. And to engage with market forces, these could be on the input side, the output side, for any service, aggregation remains the best bet. Now, aggregation, the classical vehicle is that of the farmer producer organization or the FPO. And there are other forms of aggregators. So Kheti is one such model of a technology-led intervention from a social enterprise. But such models of aggregation are the way ahead to deal with our 1 acre, 2 acre farmer. And therefore, we believe that the new farm bills have, in a way, accelerated the outreach of the market forces towards FPOs. What would have taken 5-6 years is happening now in, say, the next 18 to 24 months, because the pandemic has led to a disruption of the existing supply chains. Off-takers want to reach out to aggregated farmers through some other means. And now if the policy superstructure is supporting it, we should be expecting more outreach to happen. Indeed, we see it happening, where more corporates have expressed their desire, more processors, more SMEs have desires of working. So we feel it is a positive. The terms of trade will not improve dramatically, and then neither immediately. But these are structural changes that will take effect over the next few years for the better. So we are rather positive on the new farm laws, because it puts FPO in an ideal kind of policy space where a lot of the good work done can accelerate now.
Thank you, Mr. Rajgopal. This is for both Mr. Kaushik and Mr. Rajgopal. Professor Mishra has a follow-up question.
Okay, though I'm playing the role of host, but still I could not resist myself of asking this question. Anil, before when Hari joined here, Anil was here and he was saying that his community's presence is there in 20 states across India. So do you have also your presence here in Jharkhand?
We do have a small presence. We have a presence. We are working with some FPOs, which are promoted by the Tata Trust's programs, and then we are working with them, and then we see a good market, especially for the non-timber forest produce, which is being generated by the FPOs here. So we do have a presence in Jharkhand, but to be honest, it's a small presence, and we have a great ambitions for the state.
So what difference you have found, you have observed farming being done here in Jharkhand in comparison with the average way of farming?
Well, see, I think it's a more of the overall lay of the land. In certain states that have historically tended towards the developed side, which have caught on the development journey, there is a market infrastructure which is there. There is the physical infrastructure which connects the markets, and therefore what crop can be cultivated and what demand does it have. So the maize in Bihar is having now market access, but it has always had lesser market access in the maize which is being grown in Telangana and then the maize which is being grown elsewhere. So for example, when you are proximate to markets, larger markets, you can build a strategy around it. So business case for an enterprise, a social farmer held or otherwise, depends on where the lay of the land is. And as the overall development pace of the economy goes up, overall market infrastructure and physical infrastructure goes up, it becomes easier for value chain intermediaries to operate and connect different markets. Because abhi main, from Ranchi, for example, if I am to have an exotic fruits or an exotic vegetables focused market, I have to search for large metropolitan markets, which sustainable demand. Where are those large metropolitan centers? What is the distance of the average center? Where can I build that value chain is an important question to be examined. So the business which can sustain and the livelihood value which we must push forward must have a relevant market within a proximate viable distance. So in a way, those are the challenges which any market which we have progressively gone from. So for example, we started in Tamil Nadu, we went into Madhya Pradesh, then we came further intensified our presence in the south and central India. So we are seeing these issues, but we are also seeing in the last 5 years since of our existence an acceleration in the market infrastructure, which is why it is not going to take the next state another 20 years to catch up. So the catch up is happening much faster, and I think disruption in the value chain is indeed happening. And that is why we are quite bullish as to which business to develop faster. So some states are production states. In a production state, FPO business would be very good because you have collectives, you have a lot of production going on. Some would be agri-enterprise states where a lot of processing, grading, sorting happens. These would typically be closer to the larger consumption centers. So in a way, the section of intermediaries which require more working capital, which require more support, also depends on the configuration of the agricultural economy of the particular state.
Okay, I have one question addressed to Kaushik. Kaushik, see, what I have observed myself, because I have spent many of my years in one agriculture university's campus as my father is senior agriculture economist. So what I have observed is there is a huge gap between the knowledge being developed at different research and agri-related research centers and universities. Though these universities do have extension education departments, but still I have observed that there is a huge gap, especially with the marginal farmers or small scale farmers in terms of information, in terms of awareness, and whatever are being developed, being researched at the research centers. So, and the second thing is, it is also very difficult to, attract the farmers' attention, though we have many radio stations running such kind of promotional schemes, we have newspapers, we have Doordarshans, we have special call centers for kisans, for farmers. But still, how did you reach to the farmers? How you became successful in educating them to come to whatever, and you could explain them about your ideas, you could explain them about the greenhousing. So how it happened? What kind of difficulties, what kind of challenges you faced?
Hey, thanks a lot for the question. I think for the first question, I think in terms of agriculture extension, that's 100% a problem. There is no relevant agriculture extension. Let us be honest, like across India, like no farmer, no small farmer in India has access to advisor who can give them real, relevant, on time, understandable advice. So we have to, as a startup, have to actually build it from scratch. So we even work with universities sometimes, but our work becomes a huge amount of action research first to make it into very practical on the ground steps, right? Like what do you do as a farmer, as a small farmer on the ground? Then it also, we spend a lot of time into converting that into advisory, so into farmer accessible advisory. So today we run a tech enabled call center. So basically, as a small farmer, you just send a photo of your of your plot on WhatsApp, or you just give a missed call to our call center. And our call center, someone who's from the local village, from your village or from a neighboring village, we train them on these protocols. So it's almost telemedicine for plants. So we've sort of almost had to build a telemedicine for plants to say, okay, if A equals B equals C, in a very easy to understand advisory level, right? Even when it comes to inputs, normally if you tell farmers these are all the chemicals you have to use, or these are the seeds you have to use for this kinds of this kind of things, farmers don't really understand. They go to the input shop and say, what do I buy? And they just give them, right? So even when we give inputs, we have to design them in a way that we put like just numbers on them. And then our call center tells us this number means this. So that contextualization of advice to a small farmer is the big missing piece, which we have to do a lot. And other people are also doing it. There are other startups doing it as well. I hope that this is something that becomes centralized, because this is one of those things that is stupid to do again and again. Like, this is something that if we do it, then, someone else does it, and then a third company does it. It is like such a waste of resources. So we are hoping that that's something that becomes integrated over time. And I think there is a path towards it, because the older extension model hasn't worked. So we have to look at something, new, which is tech enabled and contextualized. For your second question, I think, I think Samunati has built that model, which is about how to scale up fast, which is about B2B2C, as Anil talked about it. I think the main model to scale, and I think Hari will be the better person to talk about that. Main model to scale, I believe, as well in India, is that even though there are FPOs, are not a lot of FPOs which are succeeding, but aggregators. So there are FPOs, there are other startups, other NGOs. So working through that, because to answer your third question, farmers, and I think someone asked in the chat as well, farmers really only are interested in buying things which they know will make money. So, and it is completely a trust point. It is not about, how much marketing you do. I mean, how much, let's say, events you do. It's about saying how much do they trust that this works, because no matter what you claim, they have seen many things that have failed. So that B2B2C model, that's why it works really well, because if they've already created trust in FPO, they are more willing to say, okay, maybe this is something that I will sign up for. So, so that's my thoughts on those three. But I think Hari will be the right person to add more on that scalability and B2B2C model.
Yeah, Mr. Kaushik, we have a linked question for you. Mr. Hari, please hold the thought. We have a question from Ms. Satyapathy, and she asks, like, how receptive are Indian farmers to technology-driven mechanized farming techniques? Can our current export policy facilitate them to compete in the global market as well? And that's where we go to Mr. Rajgopal. But then we also have a follow-up question from Mr. Kumar, who asks, what is the actual cost incurred in establishing a greenhouse in 1 acre of land, and whether there are any subsidies? Maybe you can take both of them together.
Yep, great. So, for the first question, I think I'll repeat what I said. So farmers are receptive to anything that they trust will make them money. So they, but that trust, that is that linch point. It is not about saying, do they like mechanization? Do they not like mechanization? Do they like greenhouses? They like anything that they trust will make them money. So, and that part becomes the most important part, because farmers have seen many things fail. They have seen seeds fail. They have seen so many things fail. How do you prove that, that actually that thing will make money is the most important part. For us, we do it through working with other organizations, but also doing a lot of field visits with existing farmers. So our existing farmers become the people who spread the word, because once they've used it, they only trust each other, right? Farmers trust each other. They don't, who am I to tell them that it will make 60,000 rupees every year? So I don't think, so that's the way that we look at it. In terms of the export, I think today, I think that's definitely the future for India as a whole, because I think we have a lot of producers, and there is a lot of and it is untapped in that sense in many ways, and we are getting better and better at production, like things like greenhouses, sure, but I am biased towards that, but give traceability, which is something that export markets need. The export markets need sustainable produce, safe produce, and and produce which people know what has gone into it. And those are things I think more important than the policy itself, I would say, is that we as producers have to increase our level of production so that we are ready for those export markets, is what I would say. But I think it's early stages for us as well to comment too much on that. And I think just to answer that specific question, we don't do 1 acre greenhouses, we do 1/10 an acre greenhouses for small farmers. So that is a small unit. So today that unit costs 1 lakh rupees and generates 60,000 rupees of profit every year. So about a 1.5 year payback period.
Thank you, Mr. Kaushik. So, Mr. Rajgopal, we move on to you, and we start off with the export question, and we also have a linked question from Professor Nandi, and he asked, in the post-COVID world, when firms are expected to go closer to the source by creating satellite supply chains, how do we keep our stocks fresh, reduce transportation overheads, enable competitive pricing? What are the strategic implications for the agri processing since we closely relate with it there?
Sure. I think on the export point, Kaushik has summed up the premise pretty well. I think it's about what we produce for the markets rather than the policy itself, because there are frankly enough export policy incentives. If you see that if an organization can export, there are several existing policies since many years in place. The problem is the quality and the traceability, or the amount of pesticide which is going into the produce as a net result, how much residue is there. These things are important for the export markets, which is why if you see, agrarian exports have not diversified beyond the usual produce basket, which is probably in the last 20 years. So if we have to produce more, if we want to be, for example, a vegetable supplier to the world, if we want to be a fruit supplier to the world, and indeed Indian produce is popular for its variety, but if we need to do more, than the quality and the measurement of what exactly is going inside is first important. Logistics, of course, certain value chains and certain locations will be more convenient for the export market. If you're talking of, say, ship-bound exports or even airbound exports, but I think the logistics is less important. If there is a business case, if there is a quality produce, it is available even in Himachal Pradesh, it will reach the seaport very quickly, because that's what happens to apples, right? They come all the way from Kashmir and Himachal, and they're able to reach the ports, and if they have to be exported, if they can be exported. So I think that's where the importance of paying attention of the quality control, handling, and traceability becomes very important. And then whichever intermediary is able to provide this service, and most important in the package of practices, ensure that these protocols are maintained, will crack the export story. So I think that's the more important part compared to the policy framework itself. Of course, the government can always do more, but I think if we have produce, there is a way to get it to the port. You will have refrigerated, you will have palletized, it will all be available if we are indeed supplying the market that we are targeting. Now, on the question of how will supply chains reconfigure, I think it's early days, because already what we are seeing in the F&B space, for example, we are seeing large aggregators buying from farmers and then trying to supply through, a big basket or Amazon pantry or other kind of large some consumer side aggregator. So you're already seeing some disintermediation there. Now, it depends on how many intermediaries remain in the chain when the supply chain optimizes. It is not a force-fed disintermediation. That cannot work per se in India. It is a large country, and markets can be as far as 1,000 kilometers apart. So the intermediary will have a role. But how many intermediaries remain, where they remain, until what point upstream are the end aggregators able to come in and what value they add. I think that will determine, who remains in the supply chain and who doesn't. There is no firm answer. It could be that instead of 5 intermediaries between the farmer collective or the farmer level aggregator and the retailer, maybe those 5 levels will go down to 3. But which 3? That will be determined by how much value they add in the supply chain. But it's already changing, and therefore, rather than only buying and selling, I think whether you are able to grade, sort, package, clean, value add the produce becomes more and more important. So simply rent-seeking aggregator, I have a monopoly on this market, will probably be a thing of the past in the next, say, 15 years. But how much value this aggregator adds or a mandi agent adds is important, whether he stays in the market or not. So I would say the supply chains will reconfigure, but how much value each person adds will be there, because there will be a pressure to increase the value addition to the farmer or the farmer plus one level, and consumer prices are what they are. If they rise below us above a certain level, action happens always for protecting the consumer. So if there is a medium between that, the farmer price and the consumer price, who gets how much will be determined by how relevant they become. But supply chains will reconfigure. It's happening as we speak.
So I will not like directly point this question to anyone. We have a question from Miss Kumari, which she expresses a certain doubt that the level there's no level playing field for the farmers as of now, and in case the reforms fail under the bills, then what is the backup plan that we have? Who would like to take it first? So let's go with Mr. Kaushik then, if you'd like to.
Okay. I think I'll repeat what I said before. It's the level playing field for farmers is information. So, and that's the role that right now startups are playing, but government also can play it. And we have a few of the systems already in place when you call, whether you say ENAM or, all the AgMarkNet, all of those data. But more and more, if both the supplier and the buyer have same information, then a free market works. So I think that's where, and the second part is buyer power. Again, when talking about the aggregation, which is the FPOs are a great role to play. And those two are the things that are already happening in India. I think we need to do those more so that it becomes that level playing field where farmers have seller power and they have information to use that seller power through aggregation. I don't know if there are any backup plans right now. I mean, I can't comment on if there are any backup plans, that the government has. But I think that I'm overall optimistic about it. The market figuring out a way to make sure that the farmer and the buyer succeed using these bills. But that's sort of my optimism after seeing the market for the last 10 years.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Kaushik. Thank you, Mr. Rajgopal. So we are going to the final part of the session. Probably this is the last question, and this is a question which is close to my heart because I come from northeast of India, and it is one of the lesser developed parts of India, let's say. Unfortunately, we do not have much mechanization in agriculture there. So are your organizations also working in difficult areas such as Northeast India or the islands of India where the benefits of India's development has not yet fully reached? Are any of your organizations working there, and how we can take it there? Yes, Mr. Hari, you can.
Yeah, I'm happy to say that we have opened our operations in the Northeast. We are now working in Assam, and we're working first through some of the larger support programs of the World Bank, the Northeast Rural Livelihood Project, and other such agencies. We have also hired employees who are specifically going to tap the Assam market to begin with, and then find a way to smoothen out the value chains there. So talent which is based there, looking at it because you need local talent for these very unique markets. I think the historical issue has been how quickly can you evacuate produce. Some of the produce is famous. Export quality, whether it's fruits, the vegetables, some of the finer silk and other textiles, but typically market evacuation has been the problem. Now, one thing is, I think with the already physical infrastructure development happening, at least in some part in the Northeast, it is possible to operate more smoothly. but we do have ambitions to, for example, have a setup at Siliguri, which is a huge trading hub for the Northeast, and also have a presence in Assam, wherein we can tap into the working capital requirements of the intermediaries of the value chains there, and also work with not only the FPOs, but some of the social enterprises, as well as the other forms of collectives, which are being formed, for example, by the LAMP project, by IFAD in Mizoram, by the Meghalaya Basin Development Authority, and by other such agencies, in whether it is a tea value chain or the pineapple value chain or the piggery value chain. I think these are important places where there is potential to begin with. And I would say these are low-hanging fruit, because at least the literally low-hanging fruit, and I would say there is a good potential, and then, which is why we've put up our establishment there in the Northeast.
Thank you, Mr. Rajgopal. Yes, with that, we have reached the end of the webinar today. It's a Diwali evening, and happy Diwali to all the participants of the webinar, to the speakers. Thank you for joining us. I now hand it over back to Professor Mishra for the final words of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hazarika. Honorable speakers of today's webinar, Mr. Kaushik, Mr. Anil in absentia, and Mr. Hari Rajgopal. Thank you. Thanks for such enlightening and thought-provoking explanations of your business models and how your organizations are helping the different types of farmers, especially the small scale and marginalized farmers. And we pray and we hope that you will have large scale operations here in Jharkhand also, so that our state will also get benefited out of your strategies, out of your innovative ideas. And I would also like to thank our Honorable Director, Professor Shailendra Singh Ji, for his encouragement, for his consistent support to the center. And and it's my privilege to present vote of thanks to the honorable speakers and the participants. This Center of Excellence is named on our beloved, former Prime Minister, late Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee Ji. And he had extended the slogan given by ex-Prime Minister late Lal Bahadur Shastri Ji, and he added Jai Jawan, Jai Vigyan to his slogan of Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. So I think somewhere, whatever we have been discussing so far in the last 1 hour, somewhere these are converging on these three, right? So using tech-enabled, methods, using these agricultural technologies plus all different types of technologies to go for innovation in agricultural methods, which can ultimately help to the last set of farmers, right? And though by Jawan, both of the former prime ministers meant about our brave soldiers, but in a case of agriculture also, we need to have Jawans. That means our youth, that means the new educated lot to come in and help our small farmers to increase their income, right? So this is what I can make out from your thoughtful explanations. I would also wish to express my gratitude to all the participants as well as all the important stakeholders here. And I am very grateful to my colleague, Professor Hazarika from the center. He has been very good in case of moderating these seminars. He has been a very great help to us. And last but not least, I extend my thanks to our IT department and our center staff, Ms. Prachi. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. Thank you again.